First of all, I want to plug a channel. It belongs to a friend of ours. The channel is called Echoes of History. Make sure you check it out. It's got a number of shorts on there about, obviously, history. So if you're a history buff, you may well appreciate the content on this channel. Make sure you check it out. There's a link in the description. Echoes of History. Go over there and subscribe, all you history buffs. All right, Dillian Whyte versus Jermaine Franklin, Saturday night live on DAZN. Now, I saw the face-off between the two with Eddie Hearn mediating. That was quite entertaining. I saw the press conference, and I've seen several interviews, including this one on IFL TV. Now, to me, it's clear that Dillian Whyte is doing what several other fighters have done in the past when they've gone through rough patches in their careers, which is to try and recapture the mindset that they had during their better performances. And that often includes trying to look like their old self in terms of the way they do their hair, the outfit they wear in the ring, and so on. So a couple of examples would be David Haye in the Tony Bellew fights. In the first fight, he had black shorts on and that sideshow bob haircut. But he lost that fight, and in the rematch, he came back and he had the old David Haye cane rolls and the Union Jack shorts that he wore in all his best performances. Another example, more recently, would be Anthony Joshua in the Usyk rematch. He went from constantly wearing whites and all these kind of neutral colors to wearing solid black, and he had the old trim that we saw AJ have in the Dillian Whyte fight, for example. But of course, didn't work for him, didn't work for David Haye, didn't work for Anthony Joshua. Will it work for Dillian Whyte? Because it's clear to me that's what he's doing. He's got the old mohawk back, and he seems to be going out of his way to be as aggressive, assertive, and some would even say disrespectful as possible to Jermaine Franklin. I mean, in that face-off between them, to me, it was clear he was trying to intimidate Jermaine Franklin in there. This is what Tunde Ajayi calls roadman science. And he was trying to employ the roadman science and stick it on Jermaine Franklin at the face-off. Some people are going to say, well, they're just trying to push sign-ups for DAZN. Well, yeah, it's that too. But it's a fight at the end of the day. And I do think that Dillian Whyte was trying to get in Jermaine Franklin's head and just be overbearing and intimidate him. Again, he's trying to go back to the old Dillian Whyte, the rough, tough street guy with the mohawk and all this kind of thing. Will it work? Well, where it didn't work for David Haye and Anthony Joshua, they were fighting proven opponents, whereas Jermaine Franklin is not proven. That doesn't mean he isn't any good necessarily, but his resume to date is less than spectacular. Let's put it that way, okay? I think Dillian Whyte must have taken heed of what people said about his performance against Fury, because one of the main things was he didn't have the same Dillian Whyte aggression that we saw of old. And if he had been more aggressive, he would have stood a better chance. This is something Eddie Hearn's been saying. This is something even Ben Shalom, when he was trying to sign Dillian Whyte, was saying, oh, that wasn't the real Dillian in there. Personally, I disagree. I think that was the real Dillian. I just think Tyson Fury boxed the perfect fight. I think if Dillian Whyte had been more aggressive against Fury, he would have got knocked out earlier. I think that being relatively cautious and trying to edge his way close to Fury behind the jab, that prolonged the fight, in my opinion. Because Dillian Whyte has never been particularly good at pressure fighting. That's never been his forte. Dillian Whyte is a guy who likes you to meet him in the middle of the ring, or for you to come at him. That's when he tends to be at his best. When he has to go looking for you, particularly if you're a much taller guy who's mobile and can operate behind the jab, he struggles to pin you down. He struggles to cut off the ring. We saw that in the Robert Helenius fight. And that's something I said in the run-up to his fight with Tyson Fury. I said, if Fury decides to move and keep it long, then Dillian Whyte is going to find it very, very difficult indeed. Because if he was unable to land any significant power shots to Robert Helenius' head over the course of 12 rounds, and Helenius can't move anywhere near as well as Fury, then, well, I think it's curtains for Dillian Whyte if Fury decides to box that way, keep it long and just be careful. He didn't box against Dillian Whyte the way that he did in the second Wilder fight where he was, all up in Wilder's face and hitting him with a jab and being very physical. Fury was far more calculated than that against Dillian Whyte because he knew that Dillian Whyte was a better counterpuncher than Deontay Wilder. He knew that Dillian Whyte was better on the inside than Deontay Wilder. So Fury's tactics clearly were to take away everything Dillian Whyte is good at and force him to do something which he's not particularly good at, which is coming forward and cutting off the ring. It's not Dillian Whyte's forte. And so the people saying that he would have done better if he'd come forward and been more aggressive, hey, we'll never know, but personally I disagree. I don't think it's a coincidence that when Dillian Whyte abandoned his jab against Tyson Fury and just put the earmuffs on and started walking forward, I don't think it's a coincidence that that's the moment that he got hit with the uppercut and knocked out. Okay? He's more vulnerable when he fights like that rather than cautiously stalking behind the jab. But going back to what Tunde Ajayi calls roadman science, he was calling for Dillian Whyte to use that against Tyson Fury in the run-up to the fight. I have to assume the idea was that he would upset Fury, rile him up, and get him to come out and fight aggressively, and then Dillian can walk him onto a shot. But maybe Fury knew that. Maybe Fury made a point of trying to stay as calm as possible and also keep Dillian Whyte calm because he needed to be in the right headspace, be cool and calculated to be able to box the kind of fight that he did end up boxing. So, yeah, that's all I'll say. The only things that Dillian Whyte could have done to improve his chances against Fury for me would have been to try and, as I say, agitate Fury, get him upset on fight week, and get him to fight overly aggressive and leave his chin hanging out. And the only other thing would maybe to have come in a bit lighter. So that was my take on the Fury fight. I just think Fury boxed perfect tactics, and there was nothing much Dillian Whyte could have done. Jermaine Franklin obviously doesn't have that kind of pedigree, but he's an unbeaten heavyweight. He hasn't, as people say, learned how to lose yet. We don't quite know how good he is. Now, he's listed at 6'2" with a 77-inch reach. That is officially 2 inches shorter than Dillian Whyte and a 1-inch reach disadvantage. Now, Dillian Whyte is not 6'4". Some places have listed him at 6'3". I've seen some people say 6'2" is probably closest to the mark. Let's, for argument's sake, say Dillian Whyte is 6'3", but he's certainly not 6'4". He fought Joseph Parker, who's 6'4", and when they were facing off, he looked shorter than Joseph Parker. And if you look at Dillian Whyte facing off with Derek Chisora, who's listed at 6'1", he doesn't look 3 inches taller than Chisora. I don't buy this 6'4" for Dillian Whyte, but nor do I buy 6'2" for Franklin unless Dillian Whyte has got lifts in his shoes or something. Lifts are these wedge type things that people put in their shoes to make themselves look taller. Vladimir Klitschko, I believe, was using these when he fought Tyson Fury. He put something, well, not in the ring during the fight, I don't think, but for at least one of the press conferences, it was clear that he'd put something in his shoes to make himself taller because he was actually taller than Fury at a couple of the face-offs. Whereas in the ring, obviously Fury's definitely the taller man. So I don't know if Dillian Whyte has taken a leaf out of his old training buddy, Vladimir Klitschko. Obviously, Dillian Whyte was a sparring partner for Klitschko many times. Don't know if he's taken a leaf out of his book, because look at this here. If Dillian Whyte is 6'3", are we really saying there's only an inch difference? Never mind the little hat up there, because that's just full of air, right? His top of his head's going to be about here. There's no way that's only a 1 inch difference in height. If Franklin's 6'2" and Whyte is 6'3", no way. With Franklin being short like this, it makes you wonder what kind of fight it's going to be. Will it be one where Dillian Whyte is boxing on the front foot, aggressive, taking it to Franklin, like the way he took it to Povetkin in the rematch? Or will it be something more similar to Dillian Whyte in, let's say, the Oscar Rivas fight, where he was boxing behind a jab and he was walking Rivas onto shots? Is that what we're going to see from Dillian Whyte in this fight? Based upon the aggression he's showing in the interviews and in the press conference and the face-off, I would tend to suspect he's going to try and be assertive and push Franklin back and bully him in the ring. We'll see what Franklin has, whether he's got a back foot game. Yeah, I'm just interested because if this was the Dillian Whyte of old, let's say the Dillian Whyte who fought Chisora twice, I'd be pretty confident that he beats Jermaine Franklin. It's the fact that Dillian Whyte has not only been knocked out badly in a couple of recent fights, it's also the fact that even prior to that, he was getting hurt a lot. Marius Wack hurt him. Oscar Rivas had him down. Joseph Parker dropped him. Even Robert Helenius hurt him early in the fight. There's this pattern of him just getting hurt all the time. And that's why after he got knocked out by Tyson Fury, I said, he needs to retire. It's not because he's got a terrible record or anything like that. No, he only had three losses on his record at the time he lost to Fury, right? That was the third loss. So that's not the end of the world in terms of looking at the record, especially the people he lost to. No, it's the fact that he's getting dropped and hurt so often. That's the reason I called for him to retire. Yeah? When a guy is constantly getting hurt, even in fights he's winning, even against opponents who are not particularly great, like the Marius Wacks and the Heleniuses of the world, you really have to start asking questions. And then, of course, Povetkin starched him. And then Fury, just 2 fights later, starched him as well. And I look at that uppercut that Fury landed, and yeah, it was a good shot, but that wasn't as hard or as clean as the uppercuts he was getting hit with and taken for 6 rounds against AJ before he finally caved in the 7th. That wasn't as hard as those shots or as clean. I mean, you can clearly see how much Dillian Whyte's punch resistance has deteriorated over the years. And Dillian Whyte is very bullish, of course. In this interview on IFL, he's basically sticking a middle finger up to all the people who are saying that he should retire or he should take time off and this, that, and the other. It kind of sounds like Chisora, actually, because Chisora was saying something similar after his second fight with Parker. He was saying that, people need to go and do one, basically, if they're telling him to retire. And I understand why they say this, the Dillian Whyte and Chisora, these guys, because they have their entire careers ignored the naysayers and gone on to be successful despite all the criticisms. So in their minds, it's like, I wouldn't be here if I listened to all these people doubting me. So why am I going to listen to them now? So I completely understand the mentality. I completely understand why he's sticking a middle finger up to the people who say you should just retire. But the fighter themselves, of course, is not looking at it from the same perspective that we are. We are looking at it objectively. We've seen fighters over the years carry on for far too long and end up as journeymen, end up seriously injured, end up not being able to speak well. As it stands right now, Danny Williams, who fought Mike Tyson in the early 2000s and then went on to fight Vitaly Klitschko, as far as I'm aware, he's still fighting, still getting beaten up and knocked out there in Eastern Europe somewhere. I don't think that will happen to Dillian Whyte. I don't think he would carry on that long. I certainly hope he wouldn't. But in terms of the damage that Dillian Whyte has sustained in his career so far, I see some parallels with Danny Williams potentially, because Williams, towards the end of his career, just couldn't take shots anymore. When a fighter's punch resistance goes, particularly at heavyweight, especially when it's a heavyweight who isn't 6'7" and can stay out of the way, like let's say Vladimir Klitschko, who was 6'5", 6'6", didn't have the greatest punch resistance, but he had great balance, great jab, keep you on the end of it, usually fighting much shorter and or slower opponents. Dillian Whyte doesn't have the luxury of all that. So if his punch resistance is as diminished as it seems to be to me, then his bravery and his defiance is admirable because that's what got him to where he is in life now. But it's a double-edged sword too. That's the thing. It's a double-edged sword. And when a fighter has this kind of mindset where they're not listening to any criticisms, they're not listening to any naysayers, it eventually turns against them and starts leading to their own demise. So we'll see whether that takes place here against Jermaine Franklin. On paper, again, Whyte should be able to deal with this guy. He should have the experience. He should have the mental strength and so on. But if Jermaine Franklin can get through with an uppercut, I mean, that appears to be Dillian Whyte's Achilles heel, is the uppercut. If he can get through with an uppercut, and I know Jermaine Franklin doesn't have a ton of knockouts on his record, but when a fighter's punch resistance really goes, then it really goes. And at heavyweight, I know it's a cliche to say they can all punch, but as I've said in previous videos, it is different at heavyweight, because if you imagine like a line, right? I should have paint open right here to illustrate what I'm talking about. But if you imagine a line on a graph, let's say it's a straight line that goes up like this, okay? A straight line. Now, along the bottom, you've got minimum weight, and all the different weight divisions all the way up to heavyweight. Now, the power line is going to go straight like this, okay? Pretty much, right? Maybe it's slightly curved, but let's just, for argument's sake, say it's a straight line. So once you get up to heavyweight, the power's all the way up here. Punch resistance doesn't go up at the same level. Let's say the power curves up a little bit. Punch resistance, I think, has a different trajectory, a more shallow trajectory. So it doesn't increase as much as power does as you look through the weights. So by the time you get to heavyweight, pound for pound, they can't take the kind of shot that a world level welterweight can take. Probably not explaining myself very well, but hopefully you understand the point I'm getting at here. So I don't think Franklin necessarily has to be a massive puncher if Dillian Whyte's chin is as damaged as it appears to be. If he lands something solid, I wouldn't be at all surprised if we see Dillian Whyte in trouble again. We saw it in, numerous fights. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. How are you expecting this one to pan out? And if Dillian Whyte wins, of course, especially if he wins in good fashion, they're looking to put him in there against Anthony Joshua. And by the way, just an aside, in this interview, Dillian Whyte says the reason he didn't fight Daniel Dubois was because Frank Warren abandoned the fight after he caught wind of the possibility that Fury AJ could happen. Apparently, again, according to Whyte, they were looking to do the Dubois fight in late November or early December, let's say December 3rd. But once Frank Warren believed there was an opportunity for Fury versus AJ, he said, no, we got to give that date to Fury AJ and not Dillian Whyte versus Daniel Dubois. So that's an interesting bit of information from Dillian Whyte there. And he explained to Coogan why he was looking to fight Daniel Dubois. And I think it's pretty obvious to most of us, is because Daniel Dubois has got the WBA regular belt. Prior to that, he didn't seem particularly interested in Dubois because Dubois didn't have anything he wanted. But now Dubois does have something he wants. So that's why he was looking to go down that route. And look, the heavyweight division is in flux. The titles have been changing hands. And who knows, maybe Usyk gets stripped and a title gets free somewhere else and Dillian Whyte gets another opportunity for a belt. But I would probably guess at this point that the best chance for Dillian Whyte to win any kind of belt in his career would be that Daniel Dubois fight. So I'm obviously not part of his team, but if I was, I would probably want to go in that direction rather than fight AJ again, to be honest with you. I think that Dubois is more beatable than AJ. I know some people may disagree, but you have to factor in Dillian Whyte has been knocked out by AJ before. At least with Daniel Dubois, this is somebody he's never fought before. This is somebody who doesn't know him in a boxing ring the way AJ knows him. So personally, I would look to go the Dubois route rather than fight AJ at this juncture, because I don't think he's going to get too many more opportunities to fight for a heavyweight title. If he fights AJ, he's got to go through AJ in order to get to a title shot, unless they manage, as I say, to fight for a vacant belt. Whereas if he goes to Dubois, then he's got a straight crack at a regular belt. And this is a very short career. Dillian Whyte, you have to imagine, is very close to the end of his career. So you've got to make the right choices now, especially when you got the 3 KO defeats on your record. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you're tired of the biased narratives and mass censorship on mainstream platforms, and you want to be part of a community of critical thinkers who love free speech just as much as you do, then come and join me on Patreon and access my weekly no-holds-barred, censorship-free podcast where we lift the lid on a wide variety of controversial topics. It's not mainstream friendly, it's not politically correct, but that's the whole point. We dare to stand as a beacon of reason against an army of insanity. Just head on over to my Patreon page and select the tier called Hatman Hot Topics. You'll gain access to a minimum of 2 hours of exclusive content every single week, including podcasts, videos, interviews, live stream Q&As, as well as my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. Not to mention a vast back catalog of hundreds of hours of previous episodes. You can listen via the Patreon app with the option to download in high quality MP3. We've also got an Element group where you can come and chat and hang out with myself and other members. Unlike Discord, it has full end-to-end encryption, is decentralized, and it's 100% censorship free. You can also send voice notes as well as much larger audio and video files than you can on Discord. So come and sign up on Patreon. There's no contract, there's no commitment, you can cancel at any time, and it's cheaper than a cup of coffee. So I'll see you over there. I'm out.